Hi everyone, welcome to a second session with Rafi from ProEd. We're really excited to have him back. It was a very popular session last time we ran it. This time we're going to be diving deeper into UK universities, particularly on the changes that are coming up in UCAS and how it's going to affect your application stages as well. Rafi, wonderful to have you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we're excited to learn more from you.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's always great to see such a good turnout, particularly on a Saturday morning, afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Giving up your time on a Saturday morning to learn about education and applying to university is a reflection of your character. So yeah, really excited to be here and hopefully bring a few nuggets of advice for the community here.
Wonderful. Excited to hear more. Would you like to try sharing your screen and we can dive right in?
Live. 2 seconds. Give me 2 seconds. Just gonna full screen. Let me know if that's worked properly.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Great.
Before we dive in, just to let the community know, so we're going to run through a couple of kind of informational pieces. Rafi's an expert in all things UCAS and applications, so we're going to learn a lot from that. But please do stay live and ready. We will also have quite a significant Q&A session. We'd love to get more in depth with the thoughts and questions you might have as well. So back to you, Rafi.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so last time we had a lot more questions than I guess anticipated. So we're going to run through the content thoroughly, but efficiently, so that we can leave some time for questions at the end. For those of you that were on the previous session, there are some reminders of some of the content, but we're going to just re-go over some of those because they're important points, and there's some, of course, predominantly new content here for you to consider. So. Just as a very quick reminder, I'm Rafi or Raphael Peters. I'm the managing director at ProEd. I've spent a career so far, a 7-8 year career so far in private education here in the UK, starting at some of the UK's top schools, most notably Oxford International College, working alongside some really great pioneers in Western education and global education, and helped send some of the students to top universities all over the world, particularly UK, US, but also places like Hong Kong and other global strategic pathways. So yeah, I've been very fortunate to now apply that skill set to ProEd, which is all about providing immersive career insights to students who are looking to explore and identify what they're looking to pursue in their future for their future careers. So that's a little bit about me. I will let Zubair introduce himself. I know he doesn't really need much of an introduction, but over to you, Zubair.
Thank you. No, this is my community. Hi, everyone. Great to be back and love to host sessions with you again. I'm the founder of ZNotes, which I started back when I was 16. So it's about a decade since ZNotes started. And today it's reached over 5 million students. And it's thanks to an incredible youth-led movement that we've been able to achieve this impact as well. We're excited to kind of dive deeper into how we can leverage both the resources and content available on ZNotes, the advice in the community, and partners like ProEd that can help us get us to the top places where we want to go and excel both social mobility and access to education to all. Back to you, Rafi.
Great. So just a quick overview of today's session. So we're going to talk a little bit first. I know this is about the UCAS personal statement first and foremost, and how you can stand out. But we'll take a step back. We'll think about why study in the UK at all, and why consider somewhere like the UK versus US, or Russell Group versus Ivy League. Then we'll dive into the UCAS personal statement, how you can actually utilize your experiences for the UCAS personal statement, key changes, the upcoming changes if you're applying after this academic year, after this October, from October 2025, it's changing. We'll go into the details on that. A little bit of advice on how to select the right university and course, and then we'll talk a little bit at the end about ProEd plus Q&A. So yeah, we'll dive right in. To begin with, why 10 really good reasons to consider the UK as an option. We're deemed to be some of the best, if not the best, often. It's often between the UK and US. We would be biased, but some of the best quality education in the world. A really diverse set of international students. It's a massive plus of the UK education sector, is it's a hugely international, diverse experience for students worldwide that come to study in the UK. Huge variety of courses with different universities, different specialties. Generally, a very high standard of teaching and research, but we'll go on to that in a little bit shortly. Generally shorter courses than perhaps your standard European degree or US degree. So particularly if you're a motivated student, we'll come on to that in a minute as well when we're talking about UK versus US, but shorter, more intensive courses. Decent access to scholarships and funding, particularly if you're a UK student, but also for international students. There are lots of options available depending on where you apply. And the UK is a really great place to live. There's so many different options available to UK and international students coming to study in the UK. It's a small country, but there's lots and lots that it has to offer. So yeah, really good option for many worldwide. Many students choose to work while they study in the UK, and on a tier 4 student study visa, you can work as well. If anyone has any particular questions on that, I'm not an immigration lawyer, but I do know the basics. So if anyone has any questions on that, also very happy to delve into that a little bit. And once you graduate, there's a very high rate of employability in the UK and lots of opportunity. And if you're an international student wanting to develop your English as well, then of course that's just a plus. So hopefully that just sets the scene as to the UK, why it's such a popular destination, and aside from the universities themselves. Zubair, you might also be able to weigh on this a little bit, but if we talk about UK versus US, what springs to mind for you versus the key differences?
Yeah, I think the shorter course has definitely been a really important one for me. The UK definitely is very useful if you know exactly what you want to do, because you're immediately from first year, you're able to kind of dive right into that topic and specialize quicker into this. Alongside that, I think depending on what type of experience you want at university, I studied at UCL. I was in a London-based university, so I was very much at the hub of all things, both the kind of academic side, but also commerce and economics and entrepreneurial pathways as well. And that was really valuable for me as I actually was developing and growing ZNotes. So depending on where you end up, you can really leverage the spaces that you're part of. Similar, the local universities are kind of more countryside-based universities, like we look at Oxford, Cambridge, which are cities of their own, or like things like Bath, or which are a bit smaller cities, but actually provide a much more kind of campus-based experience. Again, there's a diversity of the choice that you have there. But no, excited to hear a bit more about the difference between Russell Group and Ivy League.
Yeah, I mean I think that's one of the most obvious is the length of the course. I think we'll start with that. I think in the UK, unless you're doing a foundation degree, if you're entering an undergraduate level degree, generally speaking, it's 3 years versus the US 4, and the standard tends to be quite a lot higher. So the UK, if you come in and that's largely predicated on the fact that A levels are relatively difficult. In the grand scheme of global education, UK A levels and Singaporean A levels are very difficult compared to, say, high school in the US. So the US has a job when you get to college or Ivy League schools to kind of bring everyone's base level up, which is why you have the 4-year relatively generic undergraduate degree, versus in the UK, you can go straight into quite an advanced undergraduate degree in something like aerospace engineering. If you know what you want to study. So I think when you're talking about degree length, that's the first one. And I kind of touched on the second point, which is a really important one, which is when you're looking at the US versus the UK offers something that is, you can be very specific very quickly. So if you know that you want to study engineering, for example, to become an engineer in the US and through the Ivy League school system, you got to do freshman year, you got to do your undergraduate, and generally you specialize postgraduate level in the US. So it takes generally a lot longer to qualify and to become a specialist in the US versus in the UK, after 3 years, you've got a BSc in aerospace engineering, right? So that's another thing to consider. I know this is often tossed up between the two, but really think about, if you're sure what you want to study, then the UK is a great option, particularly for things like medicine. You can do an undergraduate degree in 6 years. In the US, it takes 8 minimum. So because you've got to do your undergraduate, you major in something, you minor in something, then you've got to go and do your postgrad medicine degree. Versus in the UK, you go straight into undergrad in medicine. If perhaps you're a little bit less sure as to what you want to study, then the US can be a very good option. Because it gives you that broad overview of different options, and you can explore as you go through your 4-year degree and further become specialized. The final thing I'd say is the level of competitiveness kind of switches at undergraduate and postgraduate level. So if you're comparing somewhere like Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial to a Harvard, Yale, Princeton, at undergraduate level, the UK is significantly more competitive. It's generally much harder to get a place at a top Russell Group school than a top Ivy League school. As an international candidate, if you're an academic student, that switches at postgraduate level. So if you've got a first class degree from a fairly decent university, getting a master's or PhD at somewhere like Oxford is considerably easier. Not easy, but easier than at undergraduate level. And in the US, applying postgrad, and that's because of people that want to specialize, it comes later. It is much more competitive. Somewhere like if you're trying to get a finance master's from Princeton, that's a hell of a lot harder than getting into somewhere like London Business School. So there are more, but those are the key areas that I would say that are worth considering when you're looking at UK versus US and the relative merits of each. I don't know if you have anything to add there, but that's kind of my general
Very
overview.
insightful. I didn't know about the postgraduate switch over. But maybe one last thing to just highlight was the fact for me as a student who'd done the A levels, um, going to a British university was very kind of natural as well. The course content really like built on our A level content, which was very valuable. I pursued a degree in mathematics, so having had done math and further math, we were all at the level playing field. We all had similar courses to
Mm.
develop on. Again, it makes sense if you are very like able to specialize super quickly. But if you want that broadness of experiences, there's also value in kind of considering more general degrees as well. But no, thanks for that. That sounds good.
Great. So this is these slides for those of you that were here last time. These are the kind of rough repeats, but just it's important to the context of why for personal statements this is important. So when we're talking about a well-rounded standout personal statement or admissions essay, what can we include in it? Really, what we don't want to do is do what I did, which is 3-4 months before my degree. I decided what I wanted to study, and then I was frantically reading books and papers to try and clue myself up on anything I could, really, to try and find some tangible content for my personal statement. You really don't want to do that. If you start early and you start thinking about actually how can I become a well-rounded professional within my subject of interest, it makes the personal statement writing so much easier. So we're talking about things like work experience, like essay competitions, like Olympiads. But generally speaking, Olympiads more for the physical science-based subjects, so Olympiad in mathematics or physics. For those types of degrees, really good option. Essay competitions generally more for social sciences, so your PPEs, your economics degrees, your history degrees, etc. But they're really good ways to stand you apart from other candidates. General evidence of wider reading. Pursuing a vocational interest in your subject is super important. And then, as we said last time, volunteering, particularly for healthcare related courses, it's kind of a prerequisite. And it's how do you reflect on, let's say that there's those 5 categories, particularly work experience, wider reading, and other supercurricular activities you've been doing. It's not just about what you've done. It's not just listing what you've done in a list of continuous prose. It's reflection on, well, what did you learn from that experience? That's what the personal statement's asking of you. What did you learn from it? And why does that make you a good fit for the course? So again, we can provide some more evidence, some kind of more ideas on this if anyone would like, but that hopefully sets the scene in terms of it's not just about the content writing of the personal statement, it's about setting yourself up for success when it comes to writing the personal statement. And really, the earlier you can decide. When I was at Oxford International College, most of these students start thinking about this at the start of their AS year. So, year 12, year 13 in the UK. Year 13 is quite late because you're applying, if you're looking at the Oxbridge deadline, you're applying in October. So really it's the start of year 12 that you
It's a
need to
really good
start thinking
point.
about these things as a minimum.
Again, I think that the crux of it is really that we want to make sure that an admission officer looks at you and knows that regardless of whether you're born into pursuing this degree or not, you are showing proactive evidence of yourself being involved with, whether it's through reading, experiences, and kind of extra learning, that you really care about that domain and that subject field. For the UK, it's a really key piece. I know that it's actually more important in the UK than even the US, because where the US, where you think a little bit more about kind of general community service as well, the UK really cares about academic specific experiences to see in their application.
Yeah, academic and course specific. The US admissions essays are much fluffier as well. It's more about personal leadership skills. You'll talk about, how you've demonstrated mastery in your personal life, as well as why you want to apply for a subject. It's a kind of more holistic piece. Whereas the personal statement is very much why you write for the course.
Correct.
And they want to know specifically why you're the right match for their course. It's a very different style. So yeah. We'll just quickly touch on the official updates from UCAS. So as I said, this year, no one's affected. So if you applied this year, then no change as of the next application cycle. So October 15th, 2025 for 2026 entry, UCAS have confirmed changes to the personal statement. They haven't yet confirmed the final changes in terms of the format under which that's coming out this summer. But they have confirmed 3 key themes that they are going to be assessing students on in some way, be that short form questions, be that essay, we're not yet sure. The first one's motivation for course. And finally, the third theme is preparation through other experiences. This is very broad. What else have you done that help you prepare, and why are these experiences useful? So, anything from self-directed extracurricular learning, that could be anything from wider reading to general subscriptions, writing blogs, etc., on things that you're passionate about, all the way through to employment and other work experience, volunteer work, etc. Again, as I mentioned earlier, what all responses should include is reflection on why, not just saying I spent a week in a law firm and now I want to be a lawyer. That doesn't tell them why you want to be a lawyer. That just tells them that you spent a week in a law firm. So is the really, really essential part of it. And the thing I'd close with is that, 2 of the 3 themes directly reference employment or work experience. This is something that wasn't quite as explicit previously in the personal statement. And it's really nice to see that actually the official guidance is now catching up with what we thought was to be the case, alongside all the other skills. So that's just a very, very quick recap on the UCAS updates and then how we can use that to actually implement it into your UCAS personal statement.
One thing to just kind of reiterate, Rafi, is that these changes are happening for fall of 2025.
So basically for the next UCAS application cycle. So obviously we've just finished one in January. So you have 2 intakes every year. The Oxbridge Med School deadline is October 15th, and then you have a January deadline for all other courses. So we've just finished the 2025 entry, meaning people going to university this September. So as of this October, it's changing for students applying. Yeah.
Okay, so this means that this is super relevant to everyone here right now who is in year 12, because they're going to be applying in the next kind of cycle, and for them, UCAS will change. They've already talked about the 3 themes, which are key and are going to be changing a lot. It is a bit daunting because, of course, we've also always referenced kind of years and years worth of personal statements that we've looked at, the 4,000 characters. Is there a consideration whether that personal statement piece will still be there, or will it be just rated in a different way?
So we've referenced this because this is the current format. We have no reason to believe that it's going to change. Well, we don't know, right? So the make the most of your 4,000 characters is something that applies to as it currently stands. It might be that those 4,000 characters turn into, at one point they were talking about 3 short form answers. It might, they're still going to ask similar content of you, just perhaps in a slightly different format. But there will almost certainly be a character restriction. I mean, there has to be, right? So the same rules apply. So we could change the 4,000 characters to blank because we're not quite sure yet what it's going to be. But obviously, if you're applying this year, there was a 4,000 character cap on what you can say. But let's say that there are these three themes, as in just that's what we know. Really, in those 3 themes, we still want to be able to prioritize the repertoire of experiences that you have. So let's say you've got some essay competitions, some volunteer experiences, some work experience, some books that you've read, what sparked your interest in the subject, etc. How do you go about prioritizing what goes in there? And from the best personal statements that I've read, tell a really good story. It's not just a list of what you've done. It's a journey of my interest started here, and then it's about how did the interest start? What did you do to kind of follow up and pursue that interest, and where are you now? And if you can tell a really good story, it's much more compelling to the reader, particularly because they read so many. As I previously said, reflection is essential in a personal statement. What impact has that had on you, and why has that driven you to want to apply to the course? And then provide specific details relating to the course. So again, we touched on this last time, a big difference between supercurricular and extracurricular focus. An extracurricular focus would be, I've captained the sports team, I'm grade 8 piano. Those are great to include if you don't have anything else, but if you're applying for an engineering degree, they're not necessarily that bothered in the UK on whether you've had a grade 8 in piano. They're more interested in what have you done that supports your course choice. Have you spent any time in an engineering firm? Have you read any books on engineering? Are you pursuing a vocational interest in engineering? So it's all about focusing. We were talking about earlier UK being quite specific, and the personal statement is reflected as such.
Makes a lot of sense.
Anything to add here, or are you happy to move on?
No, I think you've done this really well.
Great.
Happy to move on.
So one of the final pieces to think about is select the right university. What factors do you need to consider when you're thinking about the course or the university itself? So in the UK, there's lots and lots of things to think about. The first one, I think, Zubair, you touched on that earlier a little bit, city versus campus. That's a big thing in the UK, right? Because you have all three of the top London universities, LSE, UCL, Imperial, are all city campuses, which is great if you like a busy city. But they offer something that's perhaps slightly different to that of a closed campus, like an Oxford College or a Cambridge College or a Durham or even Bath, which is all on a single campus. It's a very different vibe. So understanding, am I interested in city? Am I interested in campus? There are great options for both, but they really do have a very different feel to them. And perhaps you can speak to that a little bit, because I know you were a city campus.
Were you campus?
Sorry?
Did you have a campus experience?
Mine was also a city.
Okay.
Yeah,
for sure. I can just maybe quickly speak towards that. I think you're able to develop a lot more social cohesion and community bonds when you're on campus, because you're just able to see your peers and friends a lot more often. But at the same time, you're kind of disconnected from the real life world, because you're on this kind of campus. You're just looking at your university friends all the time. You're going to your courses. You're basically a little bit in a bubble. While for me, growing up in the city and as born and raised in kind of quite a multicultural and busy city, I was drawn towards London, and I could see that the energy of both the students, but also the employed people, the kind of the workforce, the big corporations that were around me, they played a big part in me getting that holistic experience. There are difficult times, I can tell you for sure, and living in London comes with a lot of different challenges of commuting and renting and a whole bunch of stuff. But at the end of the day, that was my choice, and I think it added and it played well for me. But I do know that for a lot of my friends, they made it. For some of them, it worked. Some of them it didn't. So I think it's a really good consideration. Think about where you are growing up right now. What are your environments that you think are safe and secure? And then based on that, think about where you also want to head towards. If you're going to live and work in a city-based job, for example, a legal firm or something like that, then maybe you do need that city experience. If not, then you can think about that campus-based kind of slightly slower sedentary lifestyle as well. But back to you.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think I'll jump forwards and then come back, because this makes sense to fit this in now. Visit the university if you can. Hearing about it online and seeing videos is one thing, but you really don't get the full experience of what that university is like until you visit it. And I think just a quick anecdotal story here. When I was applying university, one of them I applied to was University of Bath, which is a very prestigious university here in the UK. And another was University of Exeter, which is another very good university. When I went to Bath, I was expecting to love it, and I really didn't like the campus. I found it a little bit soulless, and it wasn't really bustling enough for me. And so I left that experience going, oh, actually, I thought I was going to really like Bath and not like Exeter, but actually I way, way, way preferred Exeter in the end. I didn't end up going to either, but just goes to show actually seeing it in the flesh if you can. I appreciate that's not always possible. is a really it's a really good way to actually solidify that decision, particularly after you have your offers.
Yeah, and similar anecdote is that I had offers to Durham and UCL and Imperial, and I actually had the opportunity to come and visit. And I went to Durham, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a great university, but so small. I'm gonna get
Mm,
bored in a week. So I need to find something bigger and more
mm,
energetic." But honestly, if I hadn't gone and visited, I would not have known to take that decision. I'm
yeah.
very grateful that I did take the decision at the end.
Yeah. So, yeah, and again, also finances come into it. But even if if you're going to be committing 3 years to something and you have the means, certainly
Yeah,
worth checking, because you don't want to be unhappy in your first year of uni. That's for sure.
yeah.
Um, I think one of the biggest questions, and people differ philosophically on this: does ranking matter? I
Mm,
really think wholeheartedly the answer is no. Um, I think you've got to pick the right course and the right university for you. Um, Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, LSE, great universities all in their own right, and you will get access to cutting edge content. But sometimes you sacrifice other softer factors like the social experience, like the teaching quality, which we'll come on to shortly. And you've sometimes got to think about actually what are the metrics that make a university's ranking so high.
mm,
Because there's a huge misconception here. Lots and lots of students think it's because the teaching's really good. That is one very small variable of many. And the highest weighting when it comes to Russell Group ranking is research.
yeah.
So facilities is some, but the level of research that they operate there at their university is usually the single largest contributor to ranking. So that has absolutely nothing to do with the student experience, other than the fact that you might have access to slightly more up-to-date content. So really think about that. Really think about, and coming on to the next one, what is the content of the course? To begin with, forget the brand. For example, a psychology degree at UCL is entirely different to a behavioural science degree at Cambridge. So you've really got to make sure that the content is right for your interests and matches your interests first. Then make the decision on the course. So make the decision on the course, then the university. That's top tip number one. And finally, when you're talking about teaching quality, go on the rankings, look at the rankings, and actually filter by teaching quality, particularly if you're less good at perhaps always self-learning. It's a big adjustment moving from school study where you get a lot of support to university where often it's very hands-off. If you look at teaching quality metrics, a lot of the top universities don't have that great teaching quality. So for example, and this is probably going to surprise a lot of people, LSE, London School of Economics, one of the top ranked universities in the UK and consistently ranked among the top in the world, has some of the worst teaching scores in the UK. So
Wow.
just consider that, every time, look at the Times, look at the Telegraph, look at the university rankings, and just make sure that you're picking the right course for your personal circumstances.
That's a very good point. It just really matters about you weighting the factors that matter most to you, and really get kind of more hands-on on the ratings, because you can change the rankings based on subject content, teaching quality, employment after university. I think that's a very important point as well. Like
Big one, yeah.
how does my university help me get into my first job? So take all those factors into consideration. I think maybe just to kind of
Mm.
clarify, I don't think, Rafa, you're saying that forget about rankings. I think what you're saying is think
No.
about things which matter most to you. Don't just look at that kind of, oh, are they a top 10 university? Actually think about which top 10 of what exactly that you're looking at.
Yeah, I'm not saying discard any university that has a top ranking. Not at all. They all have their own merits in their own right. But what I'm
Mm,
saying is, too many students will go, I want to go to Cambridge under any circumstances, and I don't care what course. And I think you're setting yourself up for failure if that's what your attitude is. It should be, I'm passionate about this subject. Cambridge happened to offer a course that I think really matches my interests, and I'm gifted to be very academic. I'm going to apply for that course. Those are two very different situations. Yeah.
yeah, a great point. Thanks.
So yeah, just to wrap up before we go into the questions. So a little bit about ProEd. So I joined ProEd I co-founded ProEd 2.5 years ago, nearly 3 years ago, actually. And what we offer is the whole model is built on the fact that many students, parents, schools really struggle to find proper tangible work experience opportunities. So this isn't there's a big difference between getting an internship at a law firm, for example, and sitting on reception for a week and not actually seeing the inner goings of actually what happens within the legal departments of the firm. That's largely not useful for your application. What are you going to talk about in your personal statement? I sat on reception for a week and spoke to a couple of solicitors. That's not enriching. And I think for pre-undergraduate age students, school age students, finding those experiences can be really difficult unless you have family, friends, or whatever. So our business model is built on providing students with direct access to professionals in a way that's super enriching. So that's the first thing. We offer careers experiences and simulations for students aged 13 to 18, average age 15, 16, but particularly motivated 13, 14-year-olds we do take. All of our courses are designed and delivered by industry professionals. So again, it's not about academic content as such. It's about providing you with the access to industry so that at the end of the week or two, you have a really robust understanding of, is this a course that I think I can see myself doing? And as a kind of a step beyond that, is this something I can see myself doing as a career potentially in the future? So that's kind of the USP, if you like. All of our residential courses take place at Imperial College, so World Top 10 University. Also gives you a really good chance to get an understanding of, okay, what would it be like to actually live on a World Top 10 university campus, and get a little bit of an understanding of what's that like, and can I see myself here, which is particularly good for aspirational students. In terms of the career paths we offer 7 STEM-focused careers, so computer science, economics and finance or banking, engineering, entrepreneurship, which is new this year and super popular. We're nearly full for entrepreneurship, law, medicine, and psychology. So again, the kind of industry expertise that we have, as an example, our Future Doctor program is co-delivered and designed by a general surgeon from Imperial College. His name is Dr. Ahmed Ezat. He books time off work to deliver programs for our students. It's super kind of niche and practical. And we also have a academic teaching fellow from St George's Hospital in London as well as various other guest speakers from different specialties. So that's just one example. We have this, we mirror the same framework across all of the other 7 careers. But again, it's all about upskilling and providing with you with experiences that you can use to, again, reflect upon when it comes to personal statements and interviews. All of our courses feature a day in industry, so you get to go into a company for a day. If we take the engineering program as an example, you go into aerospace engineering firm. They shut down part of their hangar for our students, and you work on hydraulic systems, wings, engines, etc. Again, this is often the highlight of the experience. And what it allows students to do is actually go, not only have I learned all of the practical activities within the confines of a classroom or a workshop, I've actually gone into a company and understood what they do day to day, which is a big distinction, and really helps students stand out and shine in their applications. In terms of what you get at the end of the course, so you'll get a certificate of completion, a tutor report, both relatively standard, letter of recommendation, which I'll show you a sample of shortly. If you do Duke of Edinburgh at your school, particularly if it's a British international school, we can be considered as the residential component of the Gold Award. And you'll also be offered a career guidance session after the course online, which helps you kind of allows our teams to touch base with our students after the course and make sure that their learning objectives are being adhered to. We really want to help support our students and graduates of our programs and alumni as much as we can. Here's the sample letter of recommendation. So as you can see here, it says kind of exactly how many hours you did with us over the course of the week or two, exactly what you did, and the fact that we would endorse and encourage you to go and get more work experience or anything else really. It's co-signed by our industry partners. So in this case, the chief engineer of the aerospace engineering firm we work with. That adds that additional layer of credibility. Letters of recommendation are things that can be used directly in US Ivy League and general US university applications. It can also be referenced in the teacher reference section of the UCAS personal statement of the UCAS application form. So this is something that, again, not only helps provide work experience opportunities, but can help with the UCAS application itself as well. Finally, before we go into the Q&A, we're offering an exclusive scholarship offer to the ZNotes community. So we currently have the 10% off running. There's a very fixed number of these places available, and this is really just so that we're trying to offer as many. We're really keen to support as many ZNotes students as we can this year. For the 2-week course, it's usually £6,595. That's a residential course at Imperial College for 2 weeks, including the days in industry, evening activities, supervision, etc. The scholarship price is £4,000. That's £2,500 off. Thereabouts 40%. And the same for the 1-week course, so 1,800 versus 3,150. Again, residential at Imperial. There's 8 places made available for each course type, and they are going to be basically built on a first come first served basis. Being totally honest, these aren't courses that we make at these discount levels. We don't make a huge amount of money on these. It's more about providing widening participation as best we can. In terms of what codes you can use, that QR code will take you to our website. ZNotes Scholar 1 will give you the discount off the 1-week programs, and ZNotes Scholar 2 will give the respective discount of the 2-week program. So if there are any questions on that, you can reach out to someone from within the ZNotes community, and I'm sure this will be distributed after. But yeah, that's the offer that we have for anyone who's interested.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Rafi, for, of course, the incredible levels of insights that you've shared with us today, as well as what you're offering to the community. So I had a chance to really interact with ProEd last year. I was part of their immersive course. I was one of the speakers. I think it was a future entrepreneurial or educational program. I had a great chance to see the experience and what the students said about it. So I'm particularly grateful that you've made this so accessible to the ZNotes community. It's not really, as you very rightly said, it's not really a money-making thing at all. It really is about increasing access to bright, talented young people who will gain benefit from it. I have pasted the link in the event hall text channel as well. And please feel free to kind of read more about ProEd and what they do. Feel free to ask questions right now as well. And then we're happy to help. Those places are limited, just because it's such a competitive space as well. And I know that, Rafi, that all the courses are filling up very quickly. So there are 8 places for the 1 week and 8 places for the 2 weeks available at that bursary or scholarship places.
Particularly for things like medicine and engineering, those are always the 2 most popular. We anticipate being full on both of those courses for July in particular. So the dates are the 21st of July to the 2nd of August. That's the 2-week course. And the second 1-week course is the 18th to the 23rd of August. So again, we can provide that information, and all that information is available on our website. I can see there's been quite a lot of chatter since we've been going. I don't know how you want to go through the questions.
Absolutely. What I'll do is I'll read out the questions that have been asked previously.
Sure.
If anyone wants to ask their question live, you can also raise your hand, and we'll try to bring you onto the stage and hear you ask it live as well. So one of the questions that came up right at the beginning stage was, what are the best ways to maximize our chance of getting to Russell Group universities? I know that you talked a lot about it. Maybe kind of key synthesis of what you shared today.
Yeah, well, obviously, maximize chances. Certainly, guarantee is anyone who's guaranteeing a place would be telling a lie. I think Russell Group, there's kind of 3 key areas you need to think about. One's personal development, one is your academic journey, and one is your supercurricular activities that we were talking about. And all 3 are important. There's no point in doing loads and loads of supercurricular work and personal development work if you don't focus on your studies either. So it's about learning to manage all 3 in tandem. And I think when you're younger, I think it's more about, when you're year 6, 7, 8, 9, it's more about personal development, developing as a person, learning to develop into personal skills, and focusing on your academics, making sure that you're getting really good preparations for GCSEs and A-levels, making sure you're dedicated and you're finding study time, and exploring. When you're young, explore what you're interested in. If you think you're interested in architecture, explore that. If you think you're interested in law, explore that. Try as much as feasibly possible to get yourself ready. And when you're talking about preparing for Russell Group, the prerequisite is fairly decent academic grades. You're talking lower end, ABB through to A star, A star, A at some of the top Cambridge, Oxford A level. So once you've got the academics sorted when you're 16, 17, it's then about building that super curricular portfolio. So once you've said, okay, I think I want to apply for engineering, then it's okay, it's what Olympiads are you taking, are you doing regular work experience, have you done any engineering projects, have you asked to shadow an engineer in your local city, like what are you doing to further your profile within the engineering sphere? And all of those things together, by the time you apply, if you do it right, you're a very well-rounded candidate, that you're not sat there when you're writing a personal statement going, oh, what can I talk about? You're going, actually, what do I have to select from this big repertoire of things that I've built up over the last couple of years? So it's about starting early, in short. Start as early as you can.
Thanks for that. So I have a whole bunch of questions. I'll try to take some, because I have some multiple questions from a single person. So I'll try to take one or two from each, and then we'll keep coming back and forth between them. Can we study very different degrees in the UK, like double majoring or having a major and minor in unrelated fields? I'm personally interested in double majoring in mechanical engineering and political science. I have a pretty good personal reason for both, in my opinion. I can answer that quickly. Rafi, you can chip in as well. Most university degrees in the UK are very, very domain specific. So when you're doing engineering, you're literally doing every engineering course possible. When I did my math degree, though, I could go into a different department. I went to computer science, still pretty similar. Engineering and political science is quite distinctive. If you have a very valid reason, once you're past the first year, you have some flexibility. In general, the UK degree courses have compulsory courses or compulsory modules, and after second and third year, you're able to get optional modules. So when you get those optional spaces, you can then look at another course. The thing about courses outside your faculty is that they may not match with your timetable. So firstly, you need to get approval from your department to say, hey, I'm really interested in learning about political science with this specific module. Can I do it? They will have to send it to the Faculty of Political Sciences, get an approval from them, and then you'll see if it matches the timetable as well. So it's quite a involved process. So a general answer is that it's very, very dependent. So you should not expect this to happen. I don't know if Rafi, anything to add on that, or you have?
No, I think I'm very adequately answered. We can, in the interest of time, go on to one of the others. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to go to the question about what does the scholarship price include?
For me. So the scholarship price will include, for those of you that don't know, Imperial College is in South Kensington, which is one of the most beautiful parts of London. It's very, very historic. It has 3 of the most famous museums in the world within walking distance. So you've got Naturalist Museum, the Science Museum, the Victoria and Albert Museum. You've got the Royal Albert Hall, Hyde Park, Kensington Palace and Gardens, and Imperial is right in the middle of all of those things. So you're in a really nice location. So you get full accommodation, breakfast and dinner, lunch. Usually students will get on campus. You'll get comprehensive travel insurance included, all teaching, excursions, evening activities, supervision 24 hours a day. We have a very good team of residential staff that look after our students. And the only things that aren't included are flights and airport transfers. So we can provide those for students, and not flights, but airport transfers at an additional cost. But yeah, if you would like, the flights and generally kind of things outside of the course, so to speak, aren't included.
Fantastic. It's definitely, I mean, I know what London rent prices are, so accommodation and staying in South Ken is a huge expense. I know that.
Yes.
I imagine. Another question: what are the best ways to find financial aid for the UK? Do you have any recommendations for finding scholarships for international students?
Cool. That's a good question. So, I mean, I have to admit that my knowledge on specifics of international students applying for scholarships is somewhat limited. What I do know is that each universities often have their own bursary spaces as well. So that's the first thing to look at, is like if you're going to Oxford or Cambridge or UCL or LSE, the first place to look is on their website, because they offer scholarships of their own and bursaries of their own, depending on where you're from, what your aptitudes are, whether you're particularly academic. there are often different types of scholarship as well. Some are based on where you're from, some are based on your academic outcomes and achievements. And so the first thing I'd say is look at the websites of all of these top universities and have a look at the bursaries section, because they all are very different. And they all offer something slightly different to their students' communities. Beyond that, I have to admit, I'm not an expert when it comes to applying to scholarships in the UK.
No, I think thanks for that. I think that's a very valid piece of advice. Start from where you want to go and look at the opportunities that are there, broken down by geography, nationality, or citizenship, broken down by financial requirements or needs, needs-based scholarships, and then finally on academic scholarships. So it's just going out to do some more research on it. Another question: which entrance examinations matter highly? For example, I've heard of TMUA for computer science. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
You can answer this.
Yeah. So admissions tests in the UK, really well done, whoever knows about admissions tests, because that's not usually something you'd figure out until much later. So yeah, the admissions test essentially taught a lot of the top universities in the UK. Russell Group, so Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, to a certain extent, LSE sometimes, depending on what you're applying for. There's an extra level to the application. So you've got this kind of a three-phased approach, particularly for Oxbridge and G5. G5 meaning Oxford, Cambridge, UCL, LSE, and Imperial, for those of you that don't know. The first step is academic grades. So you get your offer based on coming in and saying, okay, I'm predicted 3 A stars at A level, and I got 7 A stars at GCSE. Great. Academic prerequisites sorted, provided you get the grades. The reason they've introduced admissions tests is too many students are getting A's and A stars. So how do we separate the best from the good students? And on top of kind of super curricular skills that we talk about, the admissions test add a different layer, and they test you in a totally different way. It's more skill set. It's verbal reasoning. It's numeracy skills, but not in a way that it's not a syllabus that you can revise for. They're much more difficult problem sets and things like that. Each course has something different. So as you say, TMUA for things like computer science, there's the UCAT and the BMAT although they're changing the BMAT for medicine. All med schools require either UCAT or BMAT in the UK at the moment. Most people will do both because it increases your options, but it's just an extra layer, and usually you'd sit them in and around November. So you'd apply to university in the October. Generally speaking, they're in the November, with the interviews as the last stage in the December, typically, generally speaking. So that's what they are. They are course specific. So if you think there's an admissions test, you need to look at the course on the website of the university. So be that Oxford, Cambridge, or otherwise.
Gotcha. Super interesting. I just realized that this is the reintroduction of the MATs, the math admissions test that Oxford used to do a while back. It's called TMUA now. Interesting. Can I apply to UK universities with SAT scores?
No. SAT scores. Remind me. SAT, is that what you get at the end of high school in the US? Or is that something that you use to apply?
It's the admissions test. So maybe I can answer a little bit. SATs, SAT 1 are not enough on their own. You do need to share your academic transcripts. So you'll need to show your school results and whatever history of education that you've had. And they need to then kind of readjust whatever scores and results you had to a A-level equivalent and then go from there. So SAT 1 on its own is not enough. I think they do consider APs as part of that kind of consideration of what your academic standing is. But generally, UK universities look for they weight A levels, IB higher, and then they look at the national curriculum, and then they look at SATs as almost like an add-on. For example, I did an SAT as well when I was applying to UK, but I never actually even used the score in my application because it was just simply not important to them. Quick follow-up on this, kind of similar follow-up. Do universities concentrate on IGCSE grade, and what are their relative importance compared to A levels?
Really good question. That really depends on where you're applying. So generally speaking, if you're looking at any Russell Group university, a GCSE or IGCSE or equivalent in English, maths, and basic science, be that dual award or triple award, is kind of a prerequisite. Most students in the UK will do English literature, English language, maths, biology, chemistry, physics. Those 6 as a minimum. However, people underestimate quite how important GCSE grades are, particularly when you're looking at top UK universities. So, for example, to apply to somewhere like Cambridge or Oxford, or any of the top Russell Group, any of the G5 universities, you'll need a minimum of 8 GCSEs, IGCSEs, and as an absolute minimum, maths, English, and triple award science for anything that's remotely academic, among others. The supplementary subjects beyond the English, maths, and science are things that are generally seen as more difficult subjects. So things like history or economics, rather than things like or a language, rather than necessarily things like for perhaps business studies or media studies. So really, there's a minimum of English, math, science, plus a supplementary academic subject, minimum 8. If you don't have those, you'll really struggle, particularly if you're looking at Oxford, Cambridge, and G5.
Very interesting. Thank you for sharing. Another question, which I maybe will answer quickly: when should I apply for Oxford University, and is there a test that I have to give during my A levels for it? Rafi touched upon this. So Oxford deadlines are mid-October on UCAS, so you do apply earlier than other universities. There is a test that you need to give depending on the course. So, for example, the math admissions will have a math admissions test. I think the physics have their own. The history has their own. The PPE have their own. So it depends on what course you're studying. They tend to have a admissions test, and then they also have an potential interview as well for the candidates that have been selected.
And to quickly add to that, some of the social science degrees also require a piece of written work as well. So it really depends. Make sure you do your research.
Yeah, super interesting. Another question: does it slacken your chances of getting academic history if you do A levels as a private student instead of with your school, as you would not have expected grades or teacher recommendations as well as extracurriculars? I can
That's a
answer a
really
little bit. Go ahead first, Rafi, and then I'll pick up as well.
no. You go first. You go first.
Okay. So from my perspective, I think there is obviously like it not having a target grades and these type of things, it does affect you. But at the same time, as long as you're a private candidate that's proactive and is trying to pick up those experiences, find recommendations from others around you, doesn't necessarily need to go away. And for example, things like ProEd, where you're going out of your way to do a course, getting a letter of recommendation, these things still strengthen your application. So I would say that don't think of the extracurriculars as only linked to school. I think things like ProEd and even going out to do volunteering or experiences, they all add up, and you need to keep being quite proactive about it. The one thing that is difficult is the expected grades or target grades. So you need to find out a way to kind of best support you. I would also recommend, if you've studied at a school at GCSE, there's no harm in asking those old teachers to be able to write a reference for you. But back to you, Rafi.
And perhaps predicted grade. So there's a couple of things, and I think this is something that I learned in my time at Oxford International College, which is all about. They had a very, very high proportion of international students, most of whom would go to top universities globally, particularly in the UK, but all over the world. One of the biggest things that students don't realise is just because. So, for those of you that aren't too familiar, the UK used to have a modular. Well, England used to have a modular A-level system, which was you could sit single modules over the course of the 2 years. So in your AS year, your first year of A level, you could sit module 1, and then in the second year, A2, you'd sit module 2. The benefit of that system was if you didn't do well in your module 1 in the AS year, you could resit that module alongside your A2 exams and bump your score up, right? And it wouldn't affect you, like the universities wouldn't penalise you for it. So that was a really good way of breaking it down. It's since changed to a linear version, which is actually all of the exams that count are in the final year of the A level. And this actually answers another question that's come in, which is out of curiosity, if you resit an A level exam. And I'll come on to that in a second. But what is really, really useful, and perhaps one of the most underrated things to do, is sit your AS exams anyway. Because if you don't have, let's say in an example here, you're self-studying and you don't have a predicted grade, what's better than a predicted grade? An achieved AS grade. So even though it's not necessarily going to count towards your A level, it's going to show you what level you're at the end of the AS year, the first year of A level. But it is the single best metric to evidence your predicted grade for A2. So let's say you got A stars at GCSE, nothing at AS level, and predicted A stars at A2. fair enough, might be reasonable, but A level's a lot harder. If you got A's at GCSE, and then A's and A stars at AS level, and then A's at A2, and predicted A stars for A2, then it's a much better it's a much better story to tell. So that's something that OIC did, Oxford International College did, for pretty much all of their students, and it's a really, really good way to provide that evidence without having to provide predicted grades as such.
Fantastic. So, but what about the question around resets? Do people are able?
Yeah. So these days resets can be quite tricky. So because it's, like I said, because it's now a linear system. Let's say, for example, you want to apply for medicine, and you don't do well in your chemistry A level, which is a required compulsory subject for studying medicine, and you don't get your achieved grades. So you decide not to apply that year, or you drop out and you try and retake and do it next year. There's two things they're interested in. One is, why are you repeating the year? Are there any extenuating circumstances? And if you can find any, then you need to use that in your narrative when you reapply. But generally speaking, if you're looking at a top university, if you haven't achieved the grades in year one, generally you wouldn't advise reapplying to that university. You would advise retaking the exam, coming up with a good reason as to why you redid the year, and then apply to a different university. So, for example, if you applied to Oxford in year one and you retook, apply to Cambridge the following year. That's generally that's the general consensus.
One thing maybe slightly different. So in the international world, we still do have AS and A2. We have it broken down. So some students do AS, and then they repeat their exams in the winter series if they need to. They do. So it is important for you to declare all exam results that you get. So you can't just hide your
Exactly.
summer AS and then show your winter AS. So it will be under consideration. Again, about weighting it down or up, I think it just depends on your circumstances. Why were you unable to get those results? If you have a good reason for that, I think they consider it fairly. But at the same time, there's not getting a high AS will definitely affect your A2. So repeating is going to be a big factor in any case. If you think you're able to do it better.
100%. If you have the repeat grade that's higher than the original, that's better than having a lower original grade. 100%. Yeah.
There's so many questions, and thanks so much for being so proactive and sharing such insightful questions. They're very, very specific as well, so I appreciate it. Trying to look at how do UK universities look at internal school transcripts? Do they put any weight on that? Actually, maybe you can answer that quickly. They have another one for you.
Yeah, that one is, it depends. So if you're doing kind of A-level IB or equivalent, generally speaking, they'll just consider those. They're less bothered on transcripts. They do care about the teacher's reference. That's something that's very underrated. But school transcripts in general aren't as necessary. For countries where the education system perhaps isn't as valid or recognised here in the UK, then they will lean more heavily into things like transcripts and things like that. So that's a very quick top level answer to that question.
And what about IPQs and EPQs? How are
EPQ. Yeah, EPQ, really good one, really interesting. So EPQ can be really good, particularly for essay-based subjects, so things like economics or history or things like that. It's a really good way to show that you can apply university level thinking before you apply to university. That's kind of what it does. The only thing that I'd say is it's like a fourth A level. So if you're going to do EPQ at the expense of achieving high grades at your A levels, don't do it. If you're already doing really well in your A levels and you feel like you could easily take something else on, then an EPQ is a really nice supplementary qualification that you can get, but do not do it at the expense of your academic achievements.
And does it count towards kind of those 7, 8 GCSEs that you want to do? I know EPQ is for the A levels. I think there's IPQ for the GCSEs nowadays as well.
Yeah, I think fewer students do the IPQ at GCSE, as I'm aware. It's the A level. The A level one's quite advanced, which is why a lot of universities will value it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Cool. I think this is a question that came up in two places, but assuming I had an average performance during my GCSEs relative to academics, as you worked on supercurriculars, but achieved the prerequisites for the university, would it offset my poor performance in GCSEs? Because we talked about IGCSEs being quite important to top your
Yeah.
grade.
So there's no one size fits all here. You'll have to kind of, there's a couple of things I want to say about that. So one is look at the course,
Mhm.
because they will have the minimum entry requirements for GCSE. So it might say minimum GCSE, maths, English, biology, for example, 3As. Or so those are the firstly look at that. The second thing would be minimum grades don't mean accepted grades, and that's a hugely misunderstood concept. People will look at a university website and say minimum grades for A level ABB. That doesn't mean you're going to get in with ABB. That means that's the minimum they will accept. If you're
Mhm.
among a really competitive cohort of people who are getting all A's and A stars, ABB isn't going to cut it. So I think that's another key thing to consider is um, minimum grades don't mean what they're going to accept, and there's no one size fits all. So, for example, if you're applying to medical school and you don't have a GCSE maths, then you won't get in. You have to have your GCSE in maths. So there's just make sure you check the course specs, and if you're unsure, phone the admissions department of that university. It's the number one way to find out exactly what you need to do to get in.
Perfect. You mentioned this a little bit previously as well, but you talked about the International Foundation Year program. Um,
Hmm.
what is that? How does that experience affect students who don't want to do their A levels, instead just want to go to their foundation program?
Yeah, so foundations can be a really good option. It does limit what undergraduate courses you can go on to. So usually it'll be pathways into certain undergraduate courses. I have to say, most kind of higher ranked Russell Group universities won't allow it, but some fairly decent UK universities will. And what it means is that it's a little bit like a freshman year in the US, right? It'll build your base level foundational, that's why it's called a foundation, your foundational level of knowledge up
Hmm.
to an acceptable standard to start an undergraduate degree.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, like I say, I'm not. Most of the students I've worked with don't consider them, but certainly do Google and have a look around as to what the options are. I don't know whether you have a little bit more insight into specifics, but that would be my.
No, it's very right. So not all universities will offer foundation programs. Some will, and when they do, they will have a very specific set of degrees that you can go straight into. So, and it tends to mean that you can't really go to another university either. Like, it can, but
Mm,
it gets you are a little bit more limited. So if you see a university degree that you really like, which has its own foundation program that you would like to be part of, I think it can accelerate and actually get you that university experience at an earlier age. But it's dependent on a lot of factors, including what course, which university, and yeah. I want to quickly answer Liana's question, which is around she wants to become a doctor in the UK, but will be attending university in Italy. Does she need anything during
mm.
transfer to UK universities? Anything to add
Okay, good
here?
question.
Or it's a very specific one. My kind of initial take is that UK, especially medicine, has a very rigorous process, and so it needs to be recognized by whatever university that you have done your medicine degree in, and they will have to review those kind of the
Mm,
transcripts, accept those transcripts, and then allow you to oftentimes make you do another year or two before you're given the full kind of
mm.
MBBS, whatever.
Yeah, so there'll be some qualification, some medical degrees worldwide. I'm not an expert in the nuances here, but some international medical degrees will not require any additional training to come to the
Mhm.
UK. So, for example, I think Singapore and a couple of others have such a high standard of undergraduate medicine that coming to the UK they don't need to retrain. I don't know about Italy, but often to become an NHS certified medical doctor, there will be there'll be some kind of conversion course that you'll need to do to
Yeah.
actually practice medicine in the UK.
Um, we're getting to time. We've been here for over an hour now, so I'm
Yeah,
going to try to wrap up with a couple more questions. This has been amazing. Thank you for all your interaction and sticking
yeah,
around
it's
for so
really
long
great.
as well. It's been really helpful and really exciting to see the interest as well. Um, is it worth going for a gap year to build up
Mm.
extracurricular, and do universities look into gap years?
Yeah, again, this is the really common question. Actually, it was when I worked at OIC, it was one of the most common questions I got.
Mhm.
Um, a gap year is great if it supports your course of interest. So uh, I'll caveat this. If you're applying to a top UK university, so if you're looking at like Oxford, Cambridge, Imperial, UCL, LSE, taking a gap year just because you want to go traveling is generally frowned upon. They want to know, why did you take a year out? Did you go out, if you're interested in biology and you went to Borneo to work in the rainforest, 100% go and do it, because it supports your application and you can provide a really good rationale as to why you took that year out.
Mm-hmm.
If you went traveling for a year just for personal development, that's great, but they might go, well, you just wasted a year and you're asking us to hold a place for you. Deferred entry or whatever, that tends to be more frowned upon. That being said, the vast majority, apart from the creme de la creme of UK universities, like places like Bristol and Durham and others, largely won't mind. So if you ultimately, particularly international students that are paying international fees, if you take a year out and want to come in a year later, usually that's fine. It's only the top ranked UK universities that are going to care.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Does partaking in research or university level research papers increase your chances of getting to the G5?
It's certainly a contributing factor. Again, there's no kind of one size fits all approach here. If you're super dedicated, like the example I always like to give is someone who hasn't had work experience, let's say in computer science, but they've spent since they were 13 every year learning to program and develop code and have built their own app, for example. That's super, super valuable, irrespective of whether they've done it by themselves and researched it themselves or not. So I'd say any kind of research in your field of interest is always going to do good things for your application.
Amazing. One final question, and then we'll go back to kind of conclusion and remarks. Should I risk to study A levels, AS and A2 within 1 year to apply for universities, or should I just use my predicted grade from AS to apply?
Oh no, so you always apply with the predicted grades in the UK. So generally speaking, so the UK is one of the few education systems in the world where you apply to university before you've received your final grades. So 99.9% of undergraduate students in the UK are applying on predicted grades. So yeah. Don't wait another year.
Yeah, and don't rush it in 1 year either, because an A level course is quite intense. To do all 4 A levels in 1 year or 3 is a really intense undertaking. So do your AS. You will be having your AS results before you apply. Remember, when you get your AS results in about August, then you apply in October or later that year, you will have that as evidence, and you'll have predicted grades for your A levels, and that will be kind of what universities will say. Okay, we want to make sure that you get this, this, and this in your A levels, and that's the offer we're giving you. Rafi, it's been such an amazing session once again. I'm so glad that we had such a great turnout as well. I have to say, this was a very short notice, as well as a kind of, it's very close to exam season as well. So well done to all of you who've come out and spent some time with us, and hope your exam preparations are going very well as well. I wonder, Rafi, if we could just, for anyone who's joined in the last few minutes, if you can share that final screen of ProEd, and then just talk through those final details, and if anyone wants to take any links as well.
If I full screen this again.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
There we go. So yeah, just for those of you that want to, that QR code will take you to our website. You can filter by course. Once you've found the course you want to do, anything that's noted back to school program, that's our 1 week program, and all the others are, future doctor, future computer scientist. You'll see the dates on there. Some are 1 week, some are 2 weeks. Discount codes are there. If you want to fill out an application form and apply to any of them, as I said, 8 spaces available for each, 16 places available total for this summer. And we'll offer them on a first come first served basis. Of course, if there are any people, if we fill them all and there are people that are really desperate, we may consider it, but it depends how many beds we have at the time.
Fantastic. Of course, any questions you can direct it to me or the ZNotes team, or Rafi as well. The application form is quite, it's just open. It just asks you for some details. And of course, we understand that this will involve your parents and stuff. So if you want more details, and for the ProEd team to get in touch with them, they can follow up with that as well. But thank you again, Rafi, for sharing so much value to our community. It's been really valuable. I know that both the students we hear live and also those who will listen to this later on will benefit from it a lot. And we're again very grateful that you're sharing this kind of really incredible opportunity for our community at such a low price as well. It's really something that's not easily accessible, for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to help, and no, I really enjoy these sessions, and it's I have to say the ZNotes community is unusual in the sense that it's super interactive, and everyone really wants to learn. And I do a lot of these talks, and I have to say this is the most This is the most interactive audience I have, so it's a real pleasure. And if anyone would like the slides, a copy of the PDF slides, I know I saw a couple of people ask for it. I'm very happy to share those.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll send that over on a PDF as well. So we'll add that to the recording of the video, PDF, and the link to ProEd as well. Thank you so much, Rafi, once again. Great to have you, and hope you have a great rest of the day. And thank you, everyone who's joined in live as well.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good weekend.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye-bye.